This broadcast is brought to you by Colby Brooks with Century 21 Right Pace Real Estate and buyfrombrooks.com. Let Colby Brooks handle all of your real estate needs. Tonight on NEA Report, I want to do a special broadcast about threats at local schools, threats involving guns and involving shootings. We're talking about several cases. One at Westside with a gun exchange that took place. I think that's the oldest story of the three we're talking about. A Nettleton student over the weekend making threats on Snapchat, of course, allegedly. And new tonight, a student punished for a shooting threat at Westside, something we've just learned about today, and we're first reporting on this broadcast on NEA Report. There are three very unique cases. One of them much more serious, one of them relatively serious, and one of them is, at least according to administrators, not as serious. But all three were taken so seriously that in each case, it could mean that the students in each of those instances, most certainly almost in the first two, their lives are forever altered. And that's a kind way of saying ruined. Because this stuff doesn't go away, as many people think, after you get out of school. No, it stays with you much longer than that. So tonight we're going to talk about that and what the prosecutor says are the actual rules behind this stuff. How that it could affect criminal charges against you in the future, even if the public isn't given access to the record. Also, we've got some advice or some information we hope that might be helpful for kids out there that are going through mental health stressors. What should you do if you're on your last thread and you need someone to help you? We're going to tell you. We're in fact going to tell you right now the answer to that's a guidance counselor and several others that you should go talk to. But we'll give you more information about that specifically on our broadcast tonight. We think it's going to be a very educational and informative one, and we'll get to it right now on NEA Report.
Stan Morris reporting.
It's Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. Thanks for joining us on NEA Report. We're just learning today of a story that took place yesterday, an instance where a fifth grader is alleged to have made threats at Westside. According to information I got today from the superintendent, Scott Gaunt, a fifth grade boy had apparently experienced some type of emotional situation, maybe a breakup with his girlfriend or something to that effect. And he sits down at the cafeteria on Monday, and according to the superintendent, he mentioned something about suicide and possibly a homicide as well, possibly shooting everybody. But according to the superintendent, from what he figured out, as soon as the boy said that, he then followed up saying, I shouldn't have said that. Apparently, this was at a cafeteria table with a number of students. I was told about 7, and 3 were apparently able to hear him say this at the time, but it was taken. It wasn't taken as he meant it seriously. The assistant principal even walked by, and nothing was said to him about it at the time. But later on, perhaps after the people go out to the playground or get back to class, the kids decided that they should probably inform the administrators and did, and procedures were followed. According to Gaunt, once it was given to us, we handled it like we were supposed to. He said, I can't tell you what we did with the student, but he did talk about the procedures that have to be followed in every case to give us an idea, of what took place. He said all kids, for instance, in an instance where there's a mention or a suspicion of possible suicidal intent or threats, or homicidal for that matter, they have to be evaluated by Mid-South Health. Gaunt actually said that they're on site, Mid-South Health Systems on site at the location for instances just like this, or for much less serious mental health worries that are out there for kids. We'll talk about that more later. Gaunt said, was it really a threat? It's hard to say. I asked him, do you think he had intentions? And Gaunt said clearly no. But he said, we're in heightened times of worry, and we have to take this stuff seriously, and he's right, and that's sort of what we're talking about tonight. He said if the kids were that worried about it, they would have told the assistant principal before they went outside. So clearly, the kids in the moment did not take that as seriously as some folks that perhaps messaged us or were worried about. He said they thought about it, they figured they should let an administrator know, they did. But he said when you talk about the younger kids, in this case a fifth grader, they don't know how to handle their own emotions sometimes. He talked about how that there's emotional stressors, and he said in 9 times out of 10, those aren't stressors at school. Those are outside of the school, at home, or perhaps some type of young budding relationship that goes awry. We talked to him about what should these kids do, right, when they're in a mental health crisis. Who do they go to when the mom and dad's not listening? Well, he said the person to go to if you're on that last thread of sanity is the guidance counselor. He said Mid-South Health is even on campus at Westside. Not always at other schools is that the case, but he says you can also go just to a teacher if that's your preference. He said we're all required to have suicide prevention and recognition training. They're supposed to be able to recognize when somebody is having issues before that person even speaks up. But especially if you have that bravery to tell someone you're having that worry, you're having that crisis, which is not a weakness. It's actually a strength to be able to acknowledge that you need help. They're going to be there for you. At least that's what we're being told. He says what happens most of the time is people say stuff in anger, but they don't mean it. But you're overheard by others. Kids don't always have that mindset yet of, I can't say the stuff at home that I would say at school. And we do live in times where one word wrong is enough to potentially destroy someone's life. And he said, when you think about stress, when kids act out, that's a response to a stimulus coming from outside of the school, just like I told you. And he said, and with that in mind, there's kids that perhaps aren't getting food, not having heat. He even said one day recently he got a call with a kid not having running water or electricity, according to the parents or the guardians. And he said, and then that kid's expected to come to school, sit down, and learn. They're being put sometimes in a more stressful situation than they're being considered for. And as the superintendent mentioned, they don't have the emotional tools to handle their feelings yet. And so they lash out and say something, and then they wish they wouldn't have said that. So they have to deal with each individual on an individual basis. Is it a troubled child? Is this a child that's made straight A's, never been in trouble, and had a bad day? He says based on that, they make the appropriate choices. We don't know what those choices are. We just know that there were some parents that had asked us about that, and we hope that this gives them a bit more insight and more answers into what they were worried about. But we want to talk now about several more cases that are much more worrying. Over the weekend, an 18-year-old student at Nettleton Public Schools is alleged to have made threats about a school shooting, and he was arrested, of course, over the weekend for that. He's been formally charged today, as you can see this report from the Jonesboro Sun, with first-degree terroristic threatening. That was after he made several Snapchat posts that are alleged to have included very serious threats. They're talking about tragedies if his ex kept playing with him. He said, quote, Nettleton, gonna have an effing tragedy. He also said, quote, Monday might not be a good day to go to school, Nettleton, and then it has several emojis that would indicate ill intentions, we'll say. It all began on February 1st when Jonesboro police were made aware of this threat, according to their press release on their Facebook page. It involved this Nettleton High School student and other students, apparently. The Criminal Investigation Division, Nettleton School Resource Officer, the Nettleton Public Schools Administration, well, they immediately began investigating this. This was posted, the threat was shared to the NEA Report News Tips group. Got a ton of attention. It's still there if you want to actually see what the pictures are, but I decided not to show them tonight in the broadcast, just to tell you what they had in them a moment ago. The person who's alleged to have posted the threat was taken into custody early in the afternoon on February 2nd. No weapons were found in his possession. And JPD said they believe the threat no longer exists, but they're encouraging anyone with additional information to forward it to them. As they said, they take these matters very seriously. We'll investigate all threats involving the harm of others. Couple of things I want to mention on this. Well, first of all, we're showing you the guy's photo, and that's obviously because he's being charged as an adult, which was not a decision that had to be made in this case by a prosecutor. He's 18, already 18. So even if you're still in high school and you're 18 years old and you make a threat, it's going to be public record, and it's not going to go away next year. This is going to be on the internet about him forever. And that's difficult because he may not think it is now, but in 10 years, 5 years, whatever, when you're trying to find a job and someone literally just Googles your name and they see this, what happens then? It stays with you forever. And in this instance, we don't know yet what the punishment will be. We don't know yet what the trial will be, what the plea will be. It's alleged until proven guilty, of course. But we know already it's being taken seriously. However, the case we're going to show you next is one that's being taken even more seriously. Two 17-year-old students are being charged as adults in a case that was also connected to the Westside School, although was not actually plotted to have taken place there. But it's an alleged murder plot that took place between Dakota Hayes and Patrick Houston that involved the allegations of criminal conspiracy to commit capital murder, which is, of course, what they're being charged with. Also, those are the kids that are alleged to have exchanged a gun on campus at Westside, which brings it to an even other level of seriousness for authorities. The conversation apparently progressed with Houston allegedly saying he was going to use the gun to kill a coworker, a 16-year-old boy at work. He was alleged to have worked at Ron's. All it said was Ron's. We assume that's the catfish place. Hayes told investigators he gave the gun to Houston knowing he intended to use it for murder, according to documents from police. And on January 23rd, which was when it all took place, the exchange in the bathroom, but thankfully another student saw it and reported it to the school resource officer, and the school took the kids into custody quickly. We've told you about this case before, so we're not going to go through everything about it again, but it's at neareport.com if you would like to know more about that. What we will tell you is, in this instance, 15,000 people so far have read our story. More have read KIT's, more have read the Jonesboro Sun's. In every instance, those people have seen the names of these two suspects, Patrick Houston, Dakota Hayes. They're still minors, but they're being charged as adults. And the press can release your name if we're legally given the name, regardless, but especially in instances like this. Westside Public Schools had to issue a statement about this 2 weeks ago, talking about the threat, talking about the arrest, and talking about the lockdown that had to be issued for the school. Very scary day for a lot of parents there of a school that has suffered horrible violence in the past. We're not going to even go into that because you should know by now. But investigators took this case incredibly seriously. And they're taking all of these cases incredibly seriously. The kids, by the way, each of those 17-year-olds, I call them kids, I may as well call them adults, but their bond, $250,000. $250,000. You think they're coming up with $25,000 cash to get out of jail? It's going to be tough to do, right? In addition to each of the high bond amounts, if they do make bond, they're on house arrest, ankle monitor. Can't do anything. Can't have fun, basically. You're certainly not allowed to have alcohol, controlled substances, or a firearm. So they're facing up to, potentially, 36 years in prison. We don't assume that that maximum penalty is what will be enacted, although it could be in theory, but it is likely they're going to be serving many years for what happened, if they're convicted, we should say. Because that'll be February 28th, their next day in court. But this is of the utmost seriousness. A gun at a school, and at the school it was at, no less. But whether it's making a statement that you shouldn't make, whether it's posting threats on social media, which you certainly shouldn't do, or in a much worse case, bringing a gun to school and allegedly participating in a murder plot. Whether it's any of those three, or obviously worse, we got to tell you, this stuff is not going away when you're turning 18. And that's the point of the broadcast tonight. A lot of kids think out there that they're going to get off and get to start afresh at 18 or when they're out of school. In many instances and in many ways you will. But not this. Our society's reached a point in not just Arkansas where we've passed laws to make certain that juveniles are charged as adults in instances like this, but in the nation, to where this is taken so seriously, there are no second chances. There is no going back. We told you 3 suspects' names in this broadcast, all of which are in high school, right? Probably not anymore. They're probably all expelled, I'm guessing, from the schools that they went to or will be. But it's not going away. It's not like this broadcast gets deleted when they're 18. Also, even if they had been charged as minors, according to prosecutor Scott Ellington, there's still going to be those crimes, they're still going to be considered going toward in the future. Even if they're found not guilty, they're going to consider all contacts with law enforcement in the future if there are future charges. If in the future one of the suspects in this case, or in the case over the weekend, gets arrested for something, they're going to be looking at this, even if the public doesn't, but they will, because this is obviously out there. Sorry, lost audio there for a second. But another point that I want to animate on this and mention and bring up that's very important is, aside from this being out there forever, aside from this being stuff that doesn't go away, no matter what age you are, there is also a way out. There is an option to do something better. And you have to make that before it gets to the point of no return. So if you do feel like that you have no choice left for mental health, if you're on your last thread of sanity, it's okay to admit that to someone. And one of the things I wanted to mention tonight was that many people have mental health troubles, probably most, and many people have to have prescriptions for those. Sometimes if you're feeling depressed, for example, or if you're feeling down, that's a chemical imbalance. It's not something you've done wrong or something someone's done to you. It's an imbalance of chemicals in your brain, and you need help. And so whether it's youth or adults out there that may be feeling troubled, we want you to know there's not a negative stigma, or there shouldn't be, with going to someone and telling them, can you help me out? It's something I've done. Yes, I'm treated for mental health just like everybody else that's treated for it. And sure, I wish I wasn't, but we've got to break the stigma that we have to be perfect in our society, because we're not. And none of us are ever going to be perfect. None of us are ever going to be flawless. And I think a lot of people out there know that. We've discussed that. I hear that discussed in church a lot, that there's only one person that could be without a mistake. But needless to say, none of us are that person. And with that in mind, I just want to get the message across. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel like you can't go on. And most importantly, it's okay to tell someone and to ask them for help. Because none of us can do this alone, this life thing. But if we are brave enough to go and to ask for help, maybe we can do it together. I just hope that some people out there watching this will consider that. I hope there's some youths that are watching this that know that there are those negative stigmas attached to mental health issues, but they should know, and they should hear it from somebody right here in the flesh, that you can make your life a tremendous success, whether you have physical disabilities or mental disabilities. 2020 is a different time. And so we should all try to take advantage of that. But it starts with us caring for each other. It starts for us standing up for what's right. And it starts with a helping hand. Don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to offer either. If you see somebody that's being bullied, stand up for them. It's a lot easier to stand up to a bully if you're not the victim. So consider that. There's just so much that kids have to go through these days. To be honest, I spent a long time on the phone tonight with the superintendent at Westside, Scott Gaunt. I wanted to ask him, what do I tell people? One of the questions I asked him was, do you think maybe we're underestimating all the stuff that kids have to go through? And I think we both agreed on that we do sometimes. That's when he specifically told me about the instance of a kid with no running water and no electricity that was being brought to school and expected to learn. And, if the kid doesn't learn, generally speaking, detention or some type of ostracizing or whatever else would be, in a lot of cases, I think we just need to consider that even if kids are younger, even if they're little people, they're still people. They're still beings with emotions and with worries and with stress. And the more we consider others and empathize, the more hopefully they will do the same to us, and we'll have a world that considers all of us and each other together. But it does start with that effort to be good. And hopefully that seed is planted. That was my goal with this broadcast, to try to put it out there to people, to let them know that it's okay to come forward and talk to someone. Don't wait until you have a breakdown. We can all have a breakdown if we push ourselves too far. Physical breakdowns or mental breakdowns. We all have the limits. Take care of yourselves out there, folks. I really hope that you do. I care about this place, Northeast Arkansas, a lot more than I'm willing to admit. So I wanted to do a broadcast tonight that I hope is not just about the news. I hope this reaches someone and it's educational and helpful to them. I wasn't sure how this was going to be received in the comments. Honestly, a lot of y'all are being incredible in the comments, and I really appreciate that right now. It's never exactly a fun thing to talk about one's own weaknesses. But sometimes we have to do that and put our neck out there a little bit, you know? And that was my idea. That's what I want to do for people, because I want them to understand that, yeah, hey, you'll have a lot of people on here telling you I'm not perfect, and I would be the first to admit it. But I will tell you I'm imperfect. And I will tell you when I need to improve. And we all have to do that. But that's how we get better, right? Oh, those kids out there. It's so tough to imagine things for them. They have to go through more now than ever, and they have to go to school with the expectation of learning in the middle of an environment like this. Let's think about them more. This is great. Andy Simpson said this in chat. Treating them like adults, not dismissing them. I like that. That's great. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight on NEA Report. Much different kind of broadcast than we normally do, but we really do appreciate it. Appreciate our sponsors, too, for letting us kind of go off of the normal path and get into this stuff. It's all about us sticking together. If you don't mind, if you want to like this broadcast, if you thought it was worth it, we would appreciate that. A share really helps as well. Maybe tag somebody that you think needs to see this. Maybe even show it to some kids out there. I think that it could be helpful if they just consider that, yes, even us adults, we know things are hard for you too. We do. Not all adults will act that way, but the ones of us who care and are informed will, and we hope that you know that you got somebody in your corner. And that's us. Message us anytime. We'll try to get you in touch with someone that's more equipped to handle things. If there's somebody out there that can, we've always leave our pages messages open, because we want to try to help people out during difficult times as well as with the news. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. We hope you have a good evening. It's 6 o'clock. Go watch KIT. Now you're up to date.